Hey everyone, Shoin Kashi here at AstroIsland. Today I have some very exciting news for you. I am going to install Pixinsight on a Linux machine. Now, I've searched through several YouTube videos and also several websites on the internet, and at least so far, I haven't seen anything pop up where anyone has done this before. So hopefully I'm going to be the first. Now, according to Pixinsight's website, their software actually runs much faster and better on a Linux machine. So we're going to put that theory to the test. I'm going to install it in a virtual environment. First, I'm going to show you how to install Linux, and thereafter, we're going to go through the steps of installing Pixinsight on that Linux environment. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before we can begin, there are a few necessary steps to ensure that Pixinsight and Linux can be installed effectively. The first thing we need to do is ensure that virtualization is enabled. So to do that, we right click on the taskbar and select Task Manager. Then we go to Performance and select, actually we check that virtualization is enabled. Now you will need to check your motherboard to see if virtualization is available and enabled. So once we have that, it's enabled, we're good to go there. As you can see, this is a pretty old PC, AMD Ryzen 5, 3.59 GHz CPU and just about 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. The next thing we'll need to do is to ensure that Hyper-V is also enabled if you're using Hyper-V for Windows. Now, there are software out there that you can install, such as VirtualBox, just to give you an example, that can be used. But in this instance, I'm using the virtual machine Hyper-V straight out of Windows. So to ensure that we have that enabled as well, we go to Start, and in my instance, I'm just going to type in Turn Windows Features On or Off. So we click on that, and we ensure that Hyper-V is enabled. So if yours is disabled, you just click on like this, you just click on that box, enable it, click OK, and you may have to restart your machine for Hyper-V now to become active. Great, so now that we have Hyper-V installed and activated, we're about to create that virtual machine, which is basically like a computer inside of a computer, but one is more, of course, virtual. So to do that, you click on Start again, type in Hyper-V, and we click on the Hyper-V Manager. And we right click, select New and Virtual Machine. Here the wizard is going to pop up, that's going to walk us through the steps of creating that virtual machine. So we click on Next. I'm going to name this Linux. I'm going to store it in a different location, the actual files for it. So click on Browse. I'm going to save it, let's say, in the virtual machines folder, and I've already created a folder called Linux. So we're going to store everything inside of there. Right, you can use either one. I usually go with generation 1, which is more or less easier for me to use. Click on Next. The default usually gives you around 4 gigs of RAM. I'm going to double that. I'm going to give 8 gigs of RAM. And I'm going to use dynamic memory, which basically tells you only when it needs more RAM usage, then it's going to allocate from your actual RAM into this virtual RAM, to keep the system running as efficiently as possible. So in my instance, I believe 8 gigs of RAM should be enough. We're going to test that. So we click on Next. Of course, we enable default switch, which is now the virtual machine is going to connect to the internet using your actual network card, whether it be a Wi-Fi card or a hardwired connection that has an internet connection. So we click on Next, and now we're going to create a virtual hard disk or virtual hard drive. Again, I'm going to save it virtual machines. I'm just going to leave it inside, maybe create a new folder, hard drive. Right, and yeah, 127 gigs should be more than enough. Maximum is usually 64 terabytes. I don't need all of that. We're just going to do Pixinsight alone in this instance. Click on next and install. We're going to install the operating system for bootable CD or DVD. Now, Pixinsight has given a particular version of Linux that needs to be installed in order for it to work really well. So if we go to Pixinsight, and we go to system requirements, they have recommended for the operating system under Linux to use either Kubuntu Linux 24.04 or 22.04. So if you click on the link, it takes us straight to the Linux Kubuntu website, and you can download Kubuntu. Now, if you're installing Kubuntu directly on a machine, a laptop or a desktop, I recommend going with the 2404.2. Now, if you're doing it on a virtual machine, which is what I'm about to do, I recommend going 24.10. At least from my experience, I've had issues in the virtual environment using Kubuntu 24.04 or 22.04. Now, you can let me know in the comments down below if you've tried this before and it's worked without this issue. Let me know what you would have done to prevent any issues from occurring. So at least for now, in this situation, we're going to use Kubuntu 24.10. So we just basically click on download. Now I have already downloaded, so we're just going to close that off. Select the virtual machine. Sorry, not the virtual machine, but the ISO or the actual OS. And here we have it. And I've actually named it for Hyper-V. And this one, as I mentioned before, Linux 24.02 actually works on a laptop. I've installed it on a laptop before. So we're going to use this one. We click on next. Just gives us a summary of everything that we've done so far, and we click on finish. Alright, so it's going to configure and create everything. Usually it's not absolutely necessary, but just to save some time, I usually like disabling checkpoints. So you don't need to do that if you don't need to, but I just that's my personal preference, just to save some time. And now we just right click again and select start. Right, and then we can double click, and that window is going to open up showing that it's about to install Linux. So you have the option of either trying it or installing it. Of course, we're going to select the first one. Right, so here the menu appears, and of course just ensure you select your language, internet connection. Of course, in our instance, we're going to install it. So we click install. Right, the installers are about to run. Again, double check everything. We click on next. Right, of course, it's going to select my area or my region, which is Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, which falls under the Americas. So we click on next. We go ahead and select your keyboard shortcut. Sorry, not your keyboard shortcut, but your keyboard model, how you'd like to have it set up, and of course various languages. Click next. I'm going to do the full installation just to ensure that we don't miss anything or there's no incompatibility. Also download and install all of the updates immediately. So again, to save some time. Right, erase this just to ensure that there are no issues. And we click on next. I'm just going to put my name. It's very much similar to when you're installing Windows on a machine. I'm just going to use Askashi. I'm just going to call this Pixinsight. Alright, I'm going to enter a password. Right, and then now I'm going to log in automatically without having to ask for the password. So that just basically means each time you restart the machine, it just goes straight into Linux without having for you to enter this password that you would have created each time. Alright, so we click next, everything looks good, and we click on install. Right, so the menu comes up again, a pop-up I should say. The Kubuntu installer is about to make changes to your disk in order to install Kubuntu 24.10. You will not be able to undo these changes. I am quite fine with that. We click on install, and away we go. So this is going to take a little while. It's going to install Linux on the virtual machine, and we'll be back shortly. So the installation of Linux is now complete, and it took a little while because we had to install the full version of Linux as well as many of the updates that we also selected in that menu before. So now that everything is complete, all we do, we leave this checkmark enabled and we click on done. The option comes up where it says please remove the installation medium, then press enter. Now Linux, the virtual machine, automatically does this for you, but if you were using on a desktop or a laptop, you would now have to disable this or remove that removable device, or well, for those of you who still use CDs, remove that CD before pressing enter. So we press enter, and the system is now going to automatically reboot and go now directly into Linux. Linux has now been fully installed, and now we're going to log in for the very first time. Right, so we enter our password and we just press enter. Once we log in, we're going to be met with this screen, the welcome center. We can just skip that. It just gives you a little idea as to what this system has to offer, or this feature within Linux has to offer. We can skip that for now. And here we have it. We've now fully installed Kubuntu Linux. Now if you want to change the desktop, you can just right click, desktop and wallpaper, and the one that I like, which is what you're going to see now, is of course this one, which is, as you know, the Core Nebula and the Foxfur Nebula. I'm not sure who took this picture, but this is actually one of the default wallpapers that comes with Linux Kubuntu. This is an absolutely beautiful picture. So if you know who took this picture, drop it down in the comments, let me know. So we've done it, folks. We have installed Linux in a virtual environment. I am so excited because in our next video, I will be installing Pixinsight inside of this Linux environment and using Pixinsight and processing an image to see how it performs compared to a Windows environment. So stay tuned for that. And as always, drop those comments down below. Let me know what you think. Have you installed Pixinsight in a Linux environment? Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you and I can help that channel grow together. I've recently created a Patreon account where you can now give me that direct support. That'll be truly appreciated. So check it out at patreon.com/AstroIsland. And as always, I close it by saying, it's not the size of a telescope that counts, it's how you use it. Bye for now, take care, and see you again very soon.